Welcome to The Pillars, the podcast of the 363rd ISR Wing of the United States Air Force. I'm Chaplain Jim Bridgham.
And I'm Dr. Jerry Walker.
On each episode of The Pillars, we find a brief resilience topic so you can practically fix any potential roadblocks you encounter and finish a better wingman, airman, and leader. So let's dive into our topic this week.
So what are we talking about today?
I think we're going to talk about caffeine, which is one of my favorite topics.
Fantastic. I actually knew we were going to talk about caffeine. So what I did is I intentionally hypercaffeinated myself for today's talk. So I'm already feeling really jittery, and my mind's running 1,000 miles an hour. So if I seem disjointed or don't make any sense, that's what I'm chalking it up to. So you get the effects of caffeine in real time.
And I went to a popular coffee chain that's located on our base here at Langley and drank a mass amount of caffeine today as well because I thought it would be awesome to do. And frankly, that's what a lot of us do to get through the duty day.
It is true. And for good reason. I mean, caffeine does a lot of really great things for our brains. I mean, it excites our brain and nervous system. It gets it pumping, just like how we get the blood flowing through our veins when we're exercising. So it helps to stimulate our attention and awareness, can really help us actually when it comes to focusing on certain things. But just like everything good that we do or that we put into our bodies, there is a certain limit where too much can become overwhelming and actually lead to negative effects. So just like everything else that's fun in life, you have to approach it with moderation.
Yep, and I think that there's some positives to it. In fact, I did some history research for this. I do love coffee particularly. I probably have what you call a problem with coffee. Quotes. So what happened was coffee originated in Ethiopia, and it was exported from there primarily to Arabia. And for a long time, believe it or not, coffee was viewed as a Muslim drink. It was viewed as a spiritual drink that was just owned by the Muslim community. And some scholars actually credit with the fact that during some of the Dark Ages, when all these great additions and movements intellectually within the Arab Peninsula were credited to these small areas where people would gather together and drink coffee and talk about things. And we talked about the concept of coming up with the number zero.
Yeah, so, there are a lot of things that scientific discoveries that we can actually trace back and credit to the Arabian Peninsula. Things like the Arabic number system, for one, which included for the first time the number zero, which prior to that, if you're familiar with the Roman numeral system, they didn't have a number or a mark indicating zero. And believe it or not, that was a huge discovery at the time, and it changed the way that we think about mathematics and in turn science. And just like so many other discoveries from the Arabian Peninsula, we've co-opted those in our European and American cultures today. But it started with a bunch of intelligent minds getting together and discussing these different concepts and certain substances, caffeine being one of them, may have been a part of those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, they gathered in these communities, and it became like a place that wasn't their home and wasn't their work, but they could develop and learn a third place, which is a concept that's used by some large chains.
Yeah, go into that. So I think we do have something kind of like that.
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's honestly, that's that community aspect. We have it in coffee shops, right?
Right.
And among other places. And so we gather around water holes. We gather around the coffee pot,
Right.
depending on how disgusting it is in whichever shop you're in. And, thank goodness it was actually coffee when it was brought into Europe. And it was finally used by people in Europe. They said, well, why should the Arabian Peninsula have the monopoly on this drink? Like, they're getting all of this great movement and great benefits from caffeine. However, it can also become problematic, I think, if you have too much, whether it's coffee or caffeine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've focused on the positive effects that caffeine can have on your brain, but it also can take a toll on your body, particularly because just like any other substance that we imbibe, the first pass is through the liver, and so our liver actually does a really good job of trying to break down those nutrients and filter out the bad stuff before it even gets into our bloodstream. And then whatever's left over hits our brain, our different organs throughout the body in addition to the brain, and then will ultimately be filtered out by the kidneys and excreted as urine. And when you have high proportions of any particular substance, whether that's alcohol, tobacco, or in this case caffeine, accumulate in your bloodstream, it can really tax your kidneys when it's time to filter that out and get rid of it out of your body. And so I know for me, actually, I just recently went to the bathroom after consuming a ton of caffeine, and I am definitely dehydrated. I mean, I feel it too, because I'm getting a little bit of a headache. This may be TMI, but urine was definitely a darker color than it normally is. So I know, okay, I'm dehydrated. And that's actually one of the effects of caffeine as well. It's a diuretic. So not only is it reducing the amount of water that you have available in your body, but it's spurring your kidneys to excrete more water as well. So you're going to get dehydrated a lot more quickly, depending on the quantity of caffeine that you consume. But that's just one of those things to watch out for at higher levels of caffeine use. Moderate levels of caffeine use, usually if you do a 1-to-1 ratio of like a coffee and a cup of water, you're helping to balance that out.
So what are some, let's say I'm on shift, I'm trying to stay awake, I've got a lot going on. What are some good tips on how to use caffeine smartly?
Sure. Well, a lot of us have this habit, I guess, of getting a coffee or an energy drink early in the morning. It's just part of our daily routine where we consume that on the way to work or first thing when we get to work. And I'm not saying that's bad, especially because I do it too, but we really should try to restrict our caffeine use to when we actually think we need it. Keep in mind that it takes about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on your physiology, for caffeine to actually get through your bloodstream to the brain, for you to actually feel the effects from the time you take that first sip. So you want to try to anticipate when you're going to need that boost from caffeine about 15 to 30 minutes prior and start consuming it then. But what's really important is trying to keep a running tab on the quantity of caffeine that you're consuming. So if you guys remember a few weeks ago, I think it was the week of March 20th through 24th, I published an SG Weekly on how to maintain SA, situational awareness, throughout the day. And in it, I talked about how we can use caffeine effectively to help us stay alert and awake during the day. And there was a chart that showed the milligrams of caffeine that are in a number of common beverages. Now, the general recommendation from the American Medical Association is to consume no more than 400 milligrams of caffeine each day. And that may not sound like a lot, but consider that in one cup of coffee, and that's an 8-ounce cup of coffee, we're already getting 100 milligrams.
Wow.
Yeah. In our standard 12-ounce energy drinks, we're usually getting about 180 to 200 milligrams. And so if you're having a cup of coffee and then an energy drink, you're already bumping up against 300 milligrams. And for some of us, that's like a normal morning at the office. And one of the things you'll notice is that even after just one cup of coffee, you start to feel a little jittery, maybe get somewhat restless. It can even spur anxiety. And if you're combining a lot of different caffeinated beverages, like I mentioned, coffee and energy drinks, you might get some nausea in your stomach, make you a little upset there. So that's a good indication that perhaps you're consuming a little too much too quickly. We really want to space it out over the day so that you're not getting some of those negative effects.
Yeah, and I know some of the things I do personally is I actually put butter in my coffee, which is a little strange, but what you do is if you put butter in coffee with coconut oil, it can actually give you some oils that help your brain, and they'll help you to be more present and not need as much coffee. So these are some safety tips. I did want to help folks understand, though, you can slow down what you drink by just being mindful, just being present. And I can get this from some spiritual principles, because a lot of people don't know that you're on holy grounds when you're brewing. And another thing just to add there is, people don't know, there is a book in the Bible called Hebrews coffee. Okay, bear with me. Okay, so the point of it is we can just focus on what we're drinking. And that concept of mindfulness is just being present. So it's focusing on the drink as you're drinking it, not just for the effect, but enjoying it. Most of us are just rushing through the beverage, and at the end of it, we forget what it even tasted like. You might feel the initial sip, but you don't realize how it's hitting your tongue. It sounds weird, and it sounds like I'm talking about someone drinking wine. But whether you're drinking coffee or an energy drink, just slow it down. Just realize what it tastes like in your mouth. It takes less than a second to do that. And that's that concept of mindfulness. And the thing is this, if you can be mindful when you're drinking an energy drink or a coffee, you can be mindful when you're doing important work for the nation. You can be mindful when you're with your family at home. You can be mindful over a meal. So you're actually practicing a spiritual life skill that can really help you in many ways. All by drinking coffee.
Yeah. So, if you take anything away from this, there are a lot of benefits to coffee. It helps us, keep alert, keep our attention on our tasks. It can be a social tool. It's how we, enjoy a community atmosphere and interact with other people. It can even help us when it comes to mindfulness and our own type of spirituality. Mm-hmm. But like I said before, too much of any good thing can actually be a bad thing. So just keep in mind that 400 milligram rule. And one of the ways that you can compute that easily, because it's not always listed on all of our beverages, is think about no more than 4 cups of brewed coffee per day. Or no more than roughly 5 cans of soda. Of course, if you're consuming that much, you're getting a ton of sugar and a ton of empty calories anyway, so I would stay away from that. And no more than 2 standard size energy drinks. We're talking about the 12 to 16 ounce energy drinks, and that's per day.
When you're saying cups, you're not saying like the cups of coffee specifically. You're not talking about the ginormous cups. You're talking a 8 ounce cup or so.
Right. So standard cup, as in 8 ounce measurement, not the big gulps that you get from some of those chain stores and 100 or gallon size mugs that you can bring. That would be substantially detrimental to your health. And one other thing I want to note. There's plenty of research out there about what caffeine does for the adult body, but for those of you with kids, one thing to keep in mind is that their bodies work and they function a lot differently than ours. They're not essentially small adults. Their bodies are still growing and changing and doing a lot of other things, maybe not as focused on filtering out some of these chemicals that we can easily consume as adults. So you really want to try to limit the caffeine that your kids are drinking until they're about midway through adolescence. So I couldn't find any generic guidelines, but just take that into consideration, especially if, say, you've got a high energy, hyperactive kid. That's not going to calm them down. It's just going to help spur them up even more. So just like with the same rules that apply to us should especially apply to our kids when it comes to moderation of caffeine use.
Well, I think this is great, and I think the moderation can come from just enjoying it. And honestly, I love going to a coffee shop and sitting there, just enjoying it and being part of that community. And wherever you're drinking energy drinks or drinking coffee, try to use it as an opportunity to connect with someone else, and that alone will slow it down. And I think that's just a good way to go. Do we have anything else we want to hit?
No, I think I'm good. Don't think I'll be sleeping tonight, but I certainly feel great right now, so that's something.
Thanks for encouraging or entertaining this idea. This was my idea to drink as much caffeine as possible for today, and I hope you enjoyed our fast-paced podcast. So if you do have any questions or follow-up points, you can email either of us. We're in the global address list. You can connect with us through Facebook as well. And if you have any questions, just let us know. We're happy to help you in everything you do. And finally, I say this every week, but thank you for everything you do. You guys have a tough job. You're working really hard, long hours. We put incredible demands on you and your family. We just want to let you know that we're praying for you. We're encouraging you. We're rooting for you. And if you need help, just come and ask.
And feel free to come by my office anytime for a cup of coffee.
Absolutely. I'll see you. Thanks. Have a great week.